In the Sheikh's embrace, she discovered that forgetting the past could also be a dangerous pleasure. If you enjoy stories like this, be sure to subscribe to this channel. We post daily. Continuing, the rain showed no signs of letting up in London that winter night. Rachel Oliver ran through the narrow streets of Shoreditch, feeling the weight of the water on her clothes and fear in her heart. She was only 24, but she carried the burden of someone who had experienced too much. The streetlights reflected in the puddles, creating shadows that seemed to pursue her. She had no definite destination, only the certainty that she could not go back. Her father, Anthony, a man of dubious character and growing debts with dangerous individuals, had found a solution to his financial problems, offering his daughter as collateral to Marcus Miller, a real estate mogul known for his unorthodox collection methods and for his empire built in the grey area of legality. Rachel discovered the agreement the day before when she overheard a conversation behind the kitchen door. "She's going to marry him, and that's that. It's the only way to save our skins," her father said, while her mother cried in silence. The marriage would be a facade. Marcus didn't want a wife, he wanted a possession, a symbol of his power over debtors, a way to show that everyone eventually paid their debts, one way or another. Rachel knew stories about women who entered that man's life and were never seen again. She crossed Blackfriars Road with soaked feet, aimlessly. She had only a small backpack with documents, some money saved from years working as a secretary at an English language school, and a visceral fear of being found. She had left her mobile phone behind. She knew she could be tracked by it. Near Blackfriars Bridge, the storm intensified. A lightning bolt cut across the dark sky when Rachel noticed headlights slowly approaching like a predator stalking its prey. Instinctively, she jumped the guardrail and scrambled down the embankment towards the banks of the River Thames. The ground, slippery with mud, made her lose her footing. Her body rolled down the slope until it violently hit a concrete structure. Pain exploded in her shoulder, and consciousness slipped through her fingers like rainwater. A few miles away, high up in a building on Oxford Street, Gregory Mason watched the storm from the window of his penthouse apartment. At 37, he was the kind of man who inspired a mixture of fascination and fear wherever he went. Heir to one of the country's largest construction companies, he had tripled the family's wealth with aggressive investments and strategies that many considered ruthless. Despite a fortune estimated in billions, he had lived reclusively for almost 2 years, ever since the tragedy. On a night like that, his wife Marina and his son Peter, only 6 years old, were returning from a weekend at their beach house in Brighton, when a runaway lorry crossed the central reservation of the M23 motorway. There was no chance of survival. Since then, Gregory had become a shadow of the man he used to be. He continued to run his businesses, but he did so remotely, through video conferences and intermediaries. He rarely left his luxury fortress, and when he did, it was to visit an isolated property he maintained on the outskirts of London in the Surrey Hills, a former agricultural estate converted into a high-end residence, surrounded by preserved woodland and a security system worthy of a military installation. That night, something compelled him to break his routine. Perhaps the echo of the thunder reminded him of the sound of the impact that took his family. Or perhaps it was the instinct that had always guided him in business. He grabbed the keys to his Range Rover and went down to the garage. He needed to drive to feel the control of the vehicle, to ward off the ghosts that visited him on nights like this. He drove along Kingsway, then Euston Road, and before he knew it, he was on the Thames embankment, with the windscreen wipers on full and his thoughts distant. That's when he noticed strange activity near Blackfriars Bridge. Something or someone had fallen onto the riverbank. Normally he would have ignored it. London was full of homeless people, and it wasn't his problem. But something made him pull over and get out, shielding himself from the rain with a black umbrella. With his mobile phone flashlight, he illuminated the embankment and saw the body of a young woman, partially immersed in the muddy water. For a devastating second, he thought he was seeing Marina. The physical resemblance was disturbing. The dark hair, the delicate structure of her face. He hurried down, slipping in the mud until he reached her. She was alive, breathing with difficulty. A cut on her forehead was bleeding, mixing with the rainwater. "Can you hear me?" he asked, touching her face. Her eyes opened briefly, unfocused, before closing again. Gregory didn't think twice. He lifted her into his arms and with difficulty climbed back to his car. He placed her in the back seat, covered her with his coat, and got into the vehicle, wet and covered in mud. He should take her to a hospital. It was the logical thing to do. But hospitals meant questions, records, investigations, and something about this woman, the small backpack, the absence of a mobile phone, her simple but well-kept clothes, indicated that she wasn't homeless. She was fleeing from something or someone. As he drove along the embankment, he made a decision that would change both their lives. He wouldn't take her to a hospital or to his Oxford Street apartment. He would head to the estate in the Surrey Hills, where he would have privacy and could care for her without external interference. He called Susan, the housekeeper, who looked after the property. "I need you to prepare the guest room and get a first aid kit," he ordered. "I'll be there in an hour, and Susan, not a word about this to anyone." The road to the Surrey Hills was almost deserted at that hour of the night. Occasionally, Gregory glanced in the rearview mirror to make sure the young woman was still breathing. Who was she? Who was she running from? For a moment, he considered the possibility that he was making a mistake. What if she was dangerous, or what if someone was looking for her? The police, her family. But something stronger compelled him forward. Perhaps it was just the physical resemblance to Marina, or perhaps it was the opportunity to do something that wasn't calculated, planned, controlled like everything else in his life for the past 2 years. Willow Creek Estate sat atop a hill, accessible only by a private dirt road that night had turned into a treacherous quagmire. The Range Rover struggled up to the main manor house, an imposing 19th-century building that Gregory had restored, maintaining the original architecture but incorporating cutting-edge technology and modern comforts. Lights came on as the car approached, and Susan appeared on the veranda, shielding herself from the rain with an umbrella. "My goodness, what happened?" the middle-aged woman exclaimed when she saw Gregory carrying Rachel in his arms. "I found her by the embankment. She needs care." Susan, accustomed to the discretion that working for Gregory required, asked no more questions. She led him to the guest room, where a king-size bed with white Egyptian cotton sheets awaited. "I'll call a doctor," Gregory said, carefully laying Rachel on the bed. "At this hour with this storm? It will take hours for anyone to get here," Susan replied. "My sister is a nurse. She lives 10 minutes from here. I can call her if you allow." Gregory nodded. As Susan left to make the call, he examined the young woman more closely in the light of the bedside lamp. She had a delicate face, with features suggesting a mixed heritage, common in many parts of the country. The cut on her forehead didn't seem deep, but her right shoulder showed visible swelling, probably dislocated or fractured in the fall. Her hands, though well kept, showed calluses from hard work. They were not the hands of a socialite or an executive. He opened the small backpack she had brought with her, an envelope with documents, an ID card, national insurance number, and employment records in the name of Rachel Oliver, 24 years old, originally from Canterbury. Some old photos, a girl hugging an older woman, probably her grandmother, a well-worn book, Middlemarch by George Eliot, and a wad of money, about £3,000 in various denominations, probably years of savings. He put everything back in the backpack and placed it on an armchair. 40 minutes later, Susan's sister, Marcia, arrived soaked but carrying her nursing bag. She examined Rachel with professional efficiency. "She has a cut on her forehead that will need a few stitches, and her shoulder is dislocated. I can take care of it right here, but she'll need strong painkillers and absolute rest for a few days. There are signs of exhaustion and dehydration. How do you know her, Mr. Mason?" "She's a business acquaintance," he lied. "She had an accident on her way here." Marcia looked at him with skepticism but didn't question it. She gave Rachel an analgesic injection, cleaned and sutured the cut on her forehead, and with a precise and painful movement reset her shoulder. Rachel groaned during the procedure, but didn't fully regain consciousness. "She should wake up in a few hours. She'll be in a lot of pain and probably confused. I've left painkillers and anti-inflammatories with instructions for use. If her fever rises above 38.5 degrees, or if she shows mental confusion, vomiting or seizures, take her to a hospital immediately. I'll come back tomorrow to check on her." After Marcia left, Gregory dismissed Susan, saying he would keep watch himself. He sat in an armchair next to the bed and watched Rachel sleep. The storm continued outside, but inside the room there was only the soft sound of the young woman's breathing and the occasional creak of the old house's wood. Around 4 in the morning, Rachel began to stir. Her eyes opened, disoriented, and when she tried to move, the pain made her groan. Gregory immediately approached. "Don't move, you're safe now." Rachel focused her eyes on him with visible effort. What she saw was a tall man of imposing presence, with intense eyes in a face marked by strong features and stubble that betrayed sleepless nights. "Who are you? Where am I?" Her voice came out hoarse and weak. "My name is Gregory Mason. I found you unconscious by the Thames embankment during the storm. I brought you to my home in the Surrey Hills to care for your injuries." "Why not a hospital?" she managed to ask. "It seemed to me that you didn't want to be found," he replied directly. Rachel's eyes widened in panic. She tried to get up again, but the pain immobilized her. "Did he find me? Does Marcus know where I am?" "I don't know who Marcus is, but no one knows you're here. Only me, my housekeeper, and the nurse who cared for you." Rachel studied Gregory's face, trying to decide if she could trust him. Something in his expression, a mixture of hardness and vulnerability, made her relax slightly. "I need water," she asked. Gregory poured a glass from the jug on the bedside table and helped her drink, carefully supporting her head. The gesture, unexpectedly gentle coming from such powerful hands, surprised Rachel. "Thank you," she murmured. I need to leave as soon as it's daylight." "You're not in a condition to go anywhere. You have a dislocated shoulder, probably a concussion, and you need rest. You'll stay here until you recover." It wasn't a request, but a statement. Rachel noticed the commanding tone in his voice, the tone of someone accustomed to giving orders and being obeyed. "You can't keep me here against my will," she challenged him, despite her vulnerable position. A humorless smile curved Gregory's lips. "Do you really think you'd be better off out there, in the storm, running from this Marcus character? Here you're safe, fed, and will receive medical care. When you're recovered, we can discuss your departure." The definitive tone in his voice allowed no arguments. Rachel felt fear growing in her chest. Had she escaped one dangerous situation only to fall into another, potentially worse one? Who was this man who had brought her to an isolated house and now declared he wouldn't let her leave? "Why are you doing this? What do you want from me?" she asked, her voice trembling with exhaustion and fear. Gregory hesitated. Even he couldn't fully explain his actions that night. There was something about her vulnerability, the implicit courage in her flight, perhaps even the superficial resemblance to Marina, that prevented him from simply letting her go. "I don't want anything from you, He paused, searching for words. "I just don't want to be responsible for another tragedy. Rest now. We'll talk when you're stronger." He left the room before she could respond, closing the door behind him. In the hallway he leaned against the wall and closed his eyes. What was he doing? He had brought a stranger into his home, a woman clearly on the run, involved in some complicated situation. It was a violation of all the protocols of caution he had established for himself after the death of Marina and Peter. In the library, he poured himself a generous measure of whiskey and sat in his favorite armchair, watching the storm that was beginning to subside through the window. Dawn slowly turned into morning, and with the first light of day, Gregory made a decision. He didn't know who Rachel Oliver was or what she was fleeing from, but something in her had awakened feelings he thought had died 2 years ago. It wasn't desire or passion. It was something more fundamental, more primitive, an instinct of protection, perhaps, or just the human need for connection that he had been denying himself since the tragedy. Whatever it was, Rachel would remain under his protection until she was fully recovered. And if this Marcus character showed up, well, Gregory Mason hadn't built an empire by being easily intimidated. Whoever this man was, he was no match for the power and resources Gregory had at his disposal. In the room, Rachel fought against the effect of the medication, trying to stay awake. She needed to think, to plan. She couldn't trust this stranger, however much something in him. A loneliness. That mirrored her own, perhaps. made her want to believe his intentions. Experience had taught her that powerful men rarely helped without expecting something in return. She studied the room around her, luxurious, but with an austerity that suggested little use. It was a guest room in a house that rarely hosted guests. Through the window, she could see the first rays of sun illuminating a landscape of lush woodland. They were truly isolated, probably miles from the nearest town. She felt panic growing again. She was trapped, injured, at the mercy of a stranger. But she was alive. And as long as she was alive, there would be a way out. She needed to regain her strength, earn this man's trust, and at the first opportunity, escape. With that determined thought, Rachel finally succumbed to exhaustion and the painkillers, sinking into a deep, dreamless sleep. On the other side of the house, Gregory finally fell asleep in his armchair, the empty whiskey glass still in his hand. Outside, the storm finally ceased, leaving behind a clear sky and a deceptive calm that precedes great transformations. The days that followed established a curious routine at Willow Creek Estate. Rachel spent most of her time confined to her room, recovering from her injuries under Susan's attentive care and Marcia's daily visits. Gregory remained distant, appearing only briefly to check on her condition, always formal, always guarded. On the morning of the fourth day, Rachel woke up feeling significantly better. Her shoulder still hurt, but she could move it carefully. She got out of bed and went to the window. The day was gloriously sunny, the kind of London winter that felt more like spring. The property, which she had only glimpsed in the dim light of dawn, now revealed itself, in all its beauty. It stretched for acres of rolling land, with horses grazing in well-kept fields, a small reservoir in the distance, and preserved native woodland surrounding the entire area. The door opened and Susan entered carrying a tray with breakfast. "It's good to see you on your feet, dear," the housekeeper said with genuine joy. "I was starting to worry. I brought fresh cheese scones, still warm from the oven." Rachel smiled, the first genuine expression of happiness since she arrived. "Thank you, Susan. You've all been very kind to me." The housekeeper placed the tray on a small table and adjusted the pillows on the bed so Rachel could sit comfortably. "Mr. Mason may seem tough, but he has a good heart. He just doesn't know how to show it very well, especially after what happened." "What happened?" Rachel asked, curiosity overcoming discretion. Susan hesitated, as if gauging how much she could say. "It's not my place to tell stories that aren't mine, but just know that he also knows suffering, perhaps even more deeply than most." She left the room before Rachel could ask more, but those words planted a seed of curiosity. Who was Gregory Mason, really? What lay behind that facade of controlled indifference? After breakfast, she gathered the courage to explore beyond the walls of her room. The corridor where she was led to a wide staircase that descended to the main hall, an impressive space with marble flooring and a crystal chandelier that reflected the sunlight entering through the tall windows. The walls displayed artworks that even her untrained eye recognized as valuable, paintings by renowned British artists like J.M.W. Turner and John Constable. Following along the ground floor, she found a library that occupied the entire east wing of the house. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves housed thousands of volumes, and a rolling ladder allowed access to the highest shelves. In the center, a solid wooden table was covered with papers, architectural blueprints, and an open laptop. Rachel approached cautiously. The drawings showed construction projects, luxury apartment complexes, shopping centers, something that looked like a hospital. "Found anything interesting?" Gregory's voice startled her. He was standing at the door, watching her with an indecipherable expression. He wore dark jeans and a white long-sleeved shirt rolled up to the elbows, a simplicity that contrasted with the luxurious surroundings. "Sorry, I didn't mean to snoop," Rachel said, moving away from the table. "I was just tired of staying in my room." Gregory entered the library and closed the door behind him. Rachel felt a shiver of apprehension. They were alone in that isolated room, and something in his posture alerted her instincts. "How are you feeling?" he asked, maintaining his distance. "Better. Thank you for everything you're doing for me." "Don't thank me yet," he replied with an enigmatic smile. "We haven't decided what happens next." the use of the plural when we decided, did not go unnoticed by Rachel. It implied that she would have some say in the decision, something his previous words had not suggested. "I don't want to cause any trouble," she said. "As soon as I'm fully recovered, I'll be on my way." "And where would you go?" Gregory asked, approaching the table and distractedly arranging some papers. "From what I understand, you're running from someone. Do you have a plan? Somewhere to stay?" The truth was, she didn't. She had left home with the sole thought of escaping, without considering what would come next. Her few friends were in Canterbury, and Marcus would certainly monitor them. She had no living relatives besides her parents. Her grandmother, the only person who had truly loved her unconditionally, had passed away years ago. "I'll manage," she replied with more conviction than she felt. "I've always found a way." Gregory studied her intently. "Who is Marcus?" The direct question caught her off guard. "How do you know about him?" "You mentioned his name when you woke up that first night. You seemed terrified he might have found you." Rachel hesitated. How much should she reveal? On the other hand, this man had taken her in and cared for her. He deserved at least an explanation. "Marcus Miller, a real estate mogul in London. My father owed him money, a lot of money, and the solution they found was to offer me as collateral." Gregory's expression hardened. "What do you mean, collateral?" "An arranged marriage. But we both knew it wouldn't be a real marriage. It would be something else." Her voice faltered slightly. "When I found out, I ran. That's when you found me." Gregory walked to one of the library windows, looking outside as he processed the information. "Marcus Miller," he repeated, as if the name was familiar to him. "From MW Developments," Rachel nodded, surprised. "You know him?" A grim smile crossed Gregory's face. "London is a small city when it comes to the business world. I know his reputation. It's not the best." He turned back to Rachel with an expression she couldn't decipher, a mixture of determination and something deeper, more unsettling. "You can stay here for as long as you need. This house has maximum security, and no one will know of your presence. When you're fully recovered, we can discuss your future plans." "Why are you doing this for me?" Rachel asked, the question that had haunted her since the first moment. "You don't know me. You owe me nothing." Gregory hesitated, as if debating internally how much to reveal. "Let's just say I have my reasons, and I don't like to see vulnerable people being exploited by men like Marcus Miller." There was more to the story, Rachel was sure, but for now she would accept the explanation and the security offered. "Thank you," she said simply. Days turned into weeks. July gave way to August, and with the change of month also came a gradual shift in the dynamic between Rachel and Gregory. What began as a relationship of beneficiary and benefactor slowly took on different contours, less defined, more complex. Rachel had fully recovered from her physical injuries and now moved freely around the property. She spent hours in the library, devouring the literary classics she had never had time to read when working and studying simultaneously. Mornings often found her on the veranda, watching the sunrise while having coffee with Susan, who had become a kind of confidant. Gregory remained an enigma. He spent days in London attending to his business, returning to the estate only on weekends or occasionally midweek without warning. When he was present, he sometimes appeared distant and preoccupied, locked in his office for hours, or he would surprise Rachel with invitations for walks around the property or long dinners flowing with wine and conversations that stretched into the early hours. On one of those nights, after a meal specially prepared by Susan, prawn curry, Rachel's favorite dish, as the housekeeper had discovered, Gregory invited her for a final glass of wine on the terrace. The night was pleasantly warm with a starry sky that only the countryside provides far from the capital's light pollution. "You never told me your story," Rachel said, feeling emboldened by the wine and the intimate atmosphere. "Susan mentioned you suffered a lot. What happened?" Gregory remained silent for so long that Rachel thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded different, lower, more vulnerable. "I lost my wife and son in a car accident 2 years ago. They were coming back from the beach when a lorry veered into the opposite lane. It was instantaneous, the doctors said. They didn't suffer. Rachel felt her heart clench. "I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have asked." "No, it's okay. It's part of who I am now." He took a long sip of wine before continuing. "Marina was an architect. We worked together. She designed, I built. A perfect partnership. Peter was 6, a brilliant boy, curious about everything." He took his mobile phone from his pocket and showed Rachel a photo, a beautiful woman with delicate features and dark hair, embracing a boy with lively eyes and a mischievous smile. The resemblance between Marina and Rachel was subtle but undeniable, the same skin tone, the same face shape. She felt a chill down her spine as she understood part of Gregory's motivations that stormy night. "After the accident, I plunged into work. We expanded the company into new markets, closed bigger deals than ever. Everyone congratulated me on my focus and resilience. No one realized it was just a way not to think, not to feel." He paused, contemplating the darkness beyond the terrace. "Until that night on the embankment. When I saw you fallen on that embankment, it was like something broke inside me. I couldn't save Marina and Peter, but maybe I could save you." The revelation hung between them, heavy and uncomfortable. Rachel didn't know how to respond. Was she a replacement? A way for Gregory to atone for some irrational guilt over the accident that took his family? "I'm not your wife," she said finally, firmly but without accusation. "And I can't replace what you lost." "I know," he replied, meeting her eyes. "Believe me, I know. In the beginning, perhaps there was something of that, the physical resemblance, the vulnerability. But now—" He hesitated. "Now I see you, Rachel. Just you, with your strength, your determination, your ability to smile, even after everything you've been through." Something in the way he said her name made Rachel's heart race. There was an intimacy there, a connection that transcended the unusual situation that had brought them together. Before she could respond, Gregory's mobile phone rang. He checked the number, frowned and answered, moving a few steps away. The conversation was brief, but when he returned, his expression had completely changed. "I need to go to London early tomorrow. A business problem that requires my personal presence." "Anything serious?" Rachel asked, sensing the shift in his energy. "Nothing that can't be resolved," he replied with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "But it means I'll be spending a few days in the city." The next morning, Gregory left before dawn. The days that followed were strangely empty for Rachel, who was surprised by the intensity with which she felt his absence. She had grown accustomed to his sporadic presence, to casual encounters around the house, to conversations that slowly revealed layers of a man much more complex and vulnerable than his initial appearance suggested. On the 4th day, she received a message on the mobile phone Gregory had given her for emergencies. "A basic, pay-as-you-go model, impossible to trace," he said. "Need you to come to London, urgent, we'll send driver. Trust me. G." The message alarmed her. What could be so urgent that it required her presence in the city? After months of hiding, the idea of returning to London terrified her. What if Marcus found her? What if her father saw her? But Gregory's message conveyed urgency, and after everything he had done for her, she couldn't ignore him. She packed a small bag, said goodbye to Susan, and waited at the property's entrance. Punctually at 2 in the afternoon, a black Mercedes with tinted windows stopped in front of the gate. The driver, a middle-aged man with the appearance of a former military officer, introduced himself as Gregory's personal security. During the almost 2-hour journey to London, he remained silent, answering only the essentials to Rachel's questions. They didn't head to the city centre as she expected, but to the Kensington neighbourhood. The car stopped in front of a high-end residential building, with visible security and an entrance hall that looked more like a luxury hotel. "Miss Oliver, Mr. Mason awaits you in apartment 1201, the driver informed her, handing her a key card. "The lift only accesses that floor with this card." Rachel went up alone, her heart racing, 1,000 questions pounding in her mind. What did Gregory want? Why the urgency? Why bring her to London after insisting so much that she remain hidden at the estate? The lift opened directly into a small private hall that led to a single door. Before she could ring the doorbell, the door opened, revealing not Gregory, but an unknown man with a serious appearance and formal attire. "Miss Oliver, I'm Paul Morrison, Mr. Mason's lawyer. Please come in. We were waiting for you." The apartment was a spacious and elegant duplex with a panoramic view of Hyde Park. In the main living area, she found not only Gregory, but 5 other people sitting around a large makeshift meeting table in the dining room. Gregory immediately stood up when he saw her, his expression a mixture of relief and concern. "Sorry to bring you here like this without explanations," he said, approaching and briefly taking her hands, "but I needed you to be here in person." He made the introductions quickly. Besides the lawyer Paul, there were a Crown prosecutor, 2 National Crime Agency officers, and a woman who introduced herself as an investigative journalist from The Guardian. "What's going on?" Rachel asked, confused and alarmed. "We're about to bring down Marcus Miller," Gregory replied with contained satisfaction, "and you are a fundamental piece in this puzzle." In the following hours, Rachel listened in astonishment to the account of what Gregory had discovered in recent months. Marcus Miller was not just a businessman with questionable methods. He was at the center of an operation involving money laundering, influence peddling, and extortion that extended across various sectors of London's public administration. Rachel's case, her father's debt, the offer of marriage, was just the tip of the iceberg of a much larger scheme. "We suspected for years, but we never had concrete evidence or witnesses willing to speak," the prosecutor explained. "People are afraid, and with good reason. Miller eliminates obstacles efficiently and discreetly." "How did you discover all this?" Rachel asked Gregory. "After you told me your story, I started investigating. Marcus and I move in the same circles, but we never did business together. I always distrusted his methods. I used my contacts, scoured public records, followed the money, and the deeper I dug, the more rot I found." "We need your testimony, Miss Oliver," one of the National Crime Agency officers interjected. "Your case establishes a pattern of criminal behavior that aligns with the other evidence we've collected." Rachel felt fear chill her spine. "If I testify, he'll come after me, and my family, however little I care about them now." "You're under federal protection," the second officer assured her, "and Mr. Mason has offered additional resources to ensure your safety." Gregory approached and sat beside her, speaking softly enough for only her to hear. "It's your choice, Rachel. No one will force you to do this. If you decide not to participate, I'll understand and continue to protect you. But this could be your chance to truly free yourself, not just to hide, but to end the threat permanently." Rachel pondered. For months she had lived as a fugitive, dependent on Gregory's generosity, always looking over her shoulder. The idea of confronting Marcus terrified her, but it also gave her a sense of power she had never experienced. For the first time since she fled that rainy night, she had a choice. Real choice, not just between lesser evils. "What do I need to do?" she finally asked. The operation that unfolded in the following days was meticulously planned. Rachel gave a formal testimony, protected by judicial secrecy. Her testimony, combined with financial evidence and recordings obtained by the investigative journalist, provided the basis for search and seizure warrants at Marcus's companies and at the residences of public officials involved in the scheme. Gregory insisted that Rachel remain in the Kensington apartment, which she discovered was one of the many properties he owned across the city, but rarely used. 2 security guards rotated at the door 24 hours a day, and she was instructed not to leave under any circumstances until the operation was concluded. The news broke on a Wednesday. Real estate mogul arrested in National Crime Agency operation. The headlines dominated the front pages of newspapers and television news. Photos of Marcus being led away in handcuffs by National Crime Agency officers circulated widely. His empire began to crumble like a house of cards. Partners publicly distancing themselves, contracts cancelled, shares plummeting on the stock exchange. That night, Gregory arrived at the apartment visibly exhausted, but with a gleam of satisfaction in his eyes. He had spent the day giving depositions and holding meetings with authorities, helping to map Marcus's connections to the underworld of London's business scene. "It's done," he said simply, accepting the glass of wine Rachel offered him. He won't be getting out any time soon. The evidence is overwhelming. They sat side by side on the sofa, watching the city lights through the wide window. A comfortable silence settled between them, the kind of silence that only exists between people who no longer need words to communicate. "What happens now?" Rachel asked finally. "With me, I mean..." Gregory turned to face her, his expression serious. "What do you want to happen?" The question hung between them, laden with unspoken possibilities. In the months they had spent together, first as savior and saved, then as host and guest, and finally as something indefinable deeper, a connection had formed. It wasn't just gratitude on her part, or the ghost of his lost wife on his. It was something new, born of the extraordinary circumstances that had brought them together, but transcending those very circumstances. "I don't know," she replied honestly. "For so long I only thought about surviving, about escaping. I never planned for an after. You can do anything now, Rachel. Go back to school, work wherever you want. You are free." The word echoed between them. Free. Was that what she had always wanted, wasn't it? Then why did the idea of leaving Gregory's protection, of no longer seeing his face every morning, of no longer sharing conversations in the evening, seem so painful? "What if I don't want to go?" The words escaped before she could contain them. Gregory studied her at length, as if trying to read beyond the words, searching for certainty in her feelings. "When I found you that night," he said slowly, "part of me saw a ghost. I saw Marina. I saw a chance for redemption, to do something right in a world that had become wrong for me." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "But over time the ghosts left, and I saw you, Rachel, just you, with your strength, your determination, your ability to smile even after everything you've been through." He reached out and touched her face gently, a touch as light as a breeze. "If you stay, I want it to be. I want for you, not out of gratitude or lack of options. I want it to be a choice, the first of many you will make as a truly free woman." Rachel covered his hand with hers. "I'm scared," she confessed. "Not of Marcus or the future. I'm scared of what I feel for you. Is it real, or is it just the result of the extraordinary circumstances that brought us together?" "There's only one way to find out," he replied. "Living each day, making choices, small and large, and seeing where they lead us." That night, she slept, in the apartment's guest room, alone with her thoughts. The next morning, Gregory had left early, leaving only a note. "I'll be having coffee at the Wren's Nest at 10 a.m. Come if you wish. If you don't, I'll understand. Either way, the apartment is yours for as long as you need it." At 9:45 a.m., Rachel left the apartment for the first time in days. The security guard offered to accompany her, but she politely declined. She needed to do this alone, to walk the streets of London no longer as a fugitive, but as a woman choosing her own path. The Wren's Nest was a few blocks away on Charlotte Street. She walked slowly, savoring the feeling of freedom, the warm winter sun on her face. The familiar sounds of the city that she had once so feared had again become just a city. She spotted Gregory through the glass, sitting at an outdoor table, reading the newspaper while having coffee. He looked different, lighter, even younger. For a moment, she just watched him, wondering if she was about to make a mistake, if she was confusing gratitude with something deeper. He looked up as if sensing her presence, and smiled when he saw her. Not a full smile. Gregory Mason was not a man of expansive expressions, but a smile that reached his eyes, that spoke of renewed hope. And at that moment, Rachel knew. What she felt was not gratitude, nor emotional confusion, nor the result of extraordinary circumstances. It was something simpler and at the same time infinitely more complex. Something that had begun on that stormy night, when two beings broken by the world found each other by chance or by destiny. She took a deep breath and took the first step towards him. That cup of coffee at the Wren's Nest marked not an end but a beginning. When Rachel sat at the table with Gregory that August morning, they made the silent decision to try, without pressure, without grand expectations, just the mutual commitment to explore what existed between them. The months that followed were filled with discoveries and adjustments. Rachel refused to simply move into Gregory's apartment or the estate. "I need to build my own life first," she explained. "I can't go from one dependency to another." Gregory not only understood, but supported her. Using his contacts, he helped her get a job as an administrative assistant at a non-profit cultural foundation in central London, a job that soon revealed her natural talent for organization and communication. With her first salary, she rented a small apartment in Notting Hill, a vibrant and accessible neighborhood. Their nights and weekends, however, often found them together. Dinners at discreet restaurants, walks through Regent's Park, extended weekends at Willow Creek Estate. The relationship slowly blossomed, built on solid foundations of mutual respect and honest communication. Not everything was perfect. Both carried deep scars, and sometimes these manifested at unexpected moments. Gregory still struggled with episodes of deep melancholy on the anniversary of Marina and Peter's deaths. Rachel, in turn, faced recurring nightmares about her past and occasional anxiety attacks when she saw someone who reminded her of Marcus or her father. But they learned to navigate these turbulent waters together. Rachel encouraged Gregory to finally seek therapy, something he had resisted for years. He, in turn, supported her decision to resume her studies, completing the business administration degree she had abandoned in Canterbury when she needed to work full-time. Marcus Miller's trial took place almost a year after his arrest. Rachel testified behind closed doors, protected by special measures due to threats that still circulated against witnesses in the case. Gregory was present at all sessions, a silent but comforting presence. When the sentence was announced, 17 years in prison for extortion, money laundering, and active corruption, an invisible weight seemed to lift from Rachel's shoulders. "It's over," Gregory whispered in her ear as they left the courthouse. "He can't reach you anymore." That night, in the privacy of Gregory's apartment, Rachel cried, not out of fear or sadness, but out of relief. A cycle was closing, allowing another to truly begin. It was the first time they slept together, not just as lovers, but as partners who had weathered a storm and emerged stronger on the other side. Life took its course. Gregory's company expanded, now with a new division focused on social housing and urban regeneration, a project born from many conversations with Rachel about her experiences growing up in the deprived areas. Rachel, in turn, was promoted to project coordinator at the foundation, developing art education programs for young people from disadvantaged communities. On a spring Sunday, almost 2 years after that fateful night on the Thames embankment, Gregory invited Rachel for a special outing. They drove to a developing area in the East End of London, stopping in front of a plot of land where construction machinery was actively working. "What do you think?" Gregory asked, observing Rachel's confused expression. "It's a construction site?" she replied, uncertain of what she should be seeing. He smiled, taking her hand and leading her to a makeshift table where architectural blueprints were spread out, protected from the wind by small stones. "This will be the Marina Mason Cultural Centre," he explained, showing her the design of a modern complex with multiple integrated buildings. Classrooms, art studios, theatre, public library, exhibition space, all free, aimed primarily at children and young people. Rachel studied the blueprints, impressed by the scale and vision of the project. "It's incredible, Gregory, but why are you showing me this now? The inauguration must be months away." "Because I want you to run it," he replied simply. "No one understands the importance of spaces like this better than you, and no one has more talent to make it work." Rachel felt tears in her eyes. It was a gift not only for her, but for entire communities that would have access to opportunities she herself never had in her youth. More than that, it was Gregory using his power and privilege to create real change, something he had started doing more and more since she entered his life. "I'll think about it," she said, not wanting to make such an important decision in the heat of the moment. "It's an enormous responsibility." Gregory nodded, respecting her process as he always did. "No pressure. The invitation remains open." On the way home, they stopped at a small, cozy coffee shop in Chelsea. While waiting for their cappuccinos, Gregory seemed unusually nervous, checking his mobile phone repeatedly and tapping his fingers on the table. "Is everything all right?" Rachel asked. "You seem tense." He took a deep breath, as if making a decision. "There's something else I want to show you today." Back in the car, they drove in silence to Belgravia, stopping in front of a modernist house, neither an ostentatious mansion nor a luxury apartment, but an elegant and welcoming residence, hidden by mature trees and a well-tended garden. "Whose house is this?" Rachel asked as Gregory opened the gate with a remote control. "Mine, or rather ours if you want." Rachel's heart quickened. It was the first time they had spoken concretely about living together. Until then, they had maintained separate residences, although they spent most of their time at each other's homes. The house inside was surprising, spacious without being excessive, luxurious without ostentation. Large windows let in abundant natural light, and the decoration blended contemporary design pieces with authentic British art. But what really caught Rachel's attention was how the space seemed created with her in mind. In the colors she appreciated, the style she admired, even the books that filled the shelves. "I bought this place 6 months ago," Gregory explained as they walked through the rooms. "I've been working on the renovation ever since. Marina designed our Oxford Street apartment and the renovation of the estate. This place, I wanted it to be ours, something we started together, without ghosts." Upstairs, he showed her the master bedroom, with its balcony overlooking the garden. Then a spacious home office with 2 desks, one for each of us, he explained, an elegant guest room, and finally a room that seemed to be awaiting definition. "This can be whatever you want," Gregory said. "A studio, an extra bedroom, or—" He hesitated briefly. "Or a child's room someday, if that's something you desire." Rachel stared at him, surprised. It was the first time he had mentioned the possibility of children. "I thought after Peter that you wouldn't want more children," she said softly. Gregory leaned against the door frame, his eyes fixed on some distant point. "I thought that too." For a long time, the idea of loving another child seemed a betrayal of his memory. He turned his gaze to Rachel. "But you taught me that it's not about replacing what we lost. It's about honoring what we had, while embracing new possibilities for love." Rachel approached, taking his hands in hers. "We don't have to decide that now." "We don't have to decide anything now," he agreed. "I just want you to know that I'm open to all possibilities for the future, as long as they are with you." Back downstairs in the living room overlooking the garden, Gregory poured 2 glasses of champagne that he had left in the refrigerator earlier. "So what do you think?" he asked, a touch of rare vulnerability in his voice. "Of the house, of the cultural center, of everything?" Rachel took a sip, allowing herself a moment to organize her thoughts before answering. "I think you're a man who knows exactly what he wants and rarely accepts no for an answer," she said with a soft smile. "I also think that somehow we managed to transform a terrible situation into something beautiful, and I'm very lucky for that." Gregory sat beside her on the sofa. "The luck was mine, Rachel. You brought life back to a man who was merely existing. You showed me that it's possible to start anew without denying the past." "Then yes," she decided. "Yes to the cultural center. I couldn't refuse the chance to create a place like that for children who need it. And yes to this house, our beginning together." The smile that lit up Gregory's face was rare in its intensity. He leaned in to kiss her, but before their lips met, he hesitated. "There's one more thing," he said, nervous in a way Rachel rarely saw him. From his pocket, he took out a small velvet box. "This isn't a condition for anything. We've talked about. If it's not what you want, we'll continue exactly as we are." He opened the box, revealing a platinum ring with a single emerald, elegant, distinctive, unconventional, like them. "I'm not asking you to be mine," he continued. "You are already your own person, and that's what I love about you. I'm asking to be yours, for us to build something together, as equals." Rachel looked at the ring, stunned by the emotion of the moment. For an instant, the ghost of her past whispered in her ear. Memories of another arranged marriage and of being treated as merchandise. But this moment couldn't be more different. Here was a man who truly knew her, who respected her independence, who had supported her every step of the way to rebuild her life on her own terms. "Yes," she replied simply, extending her hand for him to place the ring. The wedding took place 6 months later, in an intimate ceremony at Willow Creek Estate. Only close friends and the few people who had become family to Rachel, Susan, Marcia, some colleagues from the Cultural Foundation who had become confidants. The celebration was simple but meaningful. Not a display of wealth, but an affirmation of genuine human connection. The day before the ceremony, Rachel received an unexpected visit. Her mother, whom she hadn't seen since that fateful night almost 3 years earlier, appeared timidly at the entrance of the estate. "How did you find me?" Rachel asked, tense but not hostile. "Your name was in the papers during the trial," the tired-looking woman explained. "Then I looked you up. I found out about your work at the foundation, your engagement." She paused, eyes downcast. "I know I don't deserve to be here." Rachel studied the woman, who for so long had remained silent, while her father made decisions that destroyed their lives. There was anger there, yes, but also understanding. Her mother, like herself, had been a victim, perhaps not as directly, perhaps with more choices than Rachel had had, but a victim nonetheless. "And Dad?" she finally asked. "He's still the same, but we've been separated for 2 years. I finally found the courage." Something softened in Rachel's heart. "You can stay for the wedding if you want. Not as the mother of the bride, that role belongs to Susan now, but as someone who perhaps one day can be part of my life again." It was a beginning, hesitant, fragile, but a beginning. Like everything in her life in recent years, Rachel decided to approach this complicated relationship with honesty and compassion, but without giving up her boundaries and emotional security. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and warm, one of those perfect autumn days when the sky seems bluer and the air cleaner. Dressed in a simple ivory silk dress, Rachel waited on the veranda of the house while the guests settled in the garden. Gregory appeared beside, her elegant in his navy blue suit, his eyes shining in a way few besides her knew. "Ready?" he asked, offering his arm. "Almost," she replied. "There's something I need to tell you first." She led him to a more private corner of the veranda, and from her purse took out a small rectangular object, a pregnancy test. "Positive. I found out 3 days ago," she explained, carefully watching his reaction. "I wanted to be sure before telling you." Gregory stood motionless for a moment that seemed to stretch infinitely. Then, to Rachel's surprise, his eyes filled with tears, for the first time since she had known him, she saw him cry openly without reservation. "A baby," he whispered, gently touching Rachel's still flat belly. "Our baby." "Are you sure you're ready for this?" she asked, the last insecurity in her voice. "Isn't it too soon?" Gregory wiped his tears, a smile transforming his face. "It's perfectly on time. A new life, a new beginning." He held her hands in his. "Peter will always be my son, a part of my heart forever. And this baby will be loved the same way, completely, unconditionally, for being exactly who they are." They exchanged a soft kiss, a silent promise of all that was to come. Then, arm in arm, they walked together to the garden where their friends awaited. The path was covered with wildflower petals, not traditional roses, but the resilient and colorful flowers that grew naturally on the property, surviving all seasons, adapting and flourishing even in the most adverse conditions. Like them. The ceremony was conducted by a registrar, a friend of Gregory's from university. They exchanged vows they had written personally, honest words about finding light in darkness, about daily choices and courageous new beginnings. When the rings were exchanged, the sun reached its zenith in the sky, bathing the garden in a golden light that seemed to bless that improbable union. The reception that followed stretched through the afternoon and into the night. Good food, live music, meaningful conversations. There was no pomp or ostentation, just the genuine celebration of a love that had been born from the most improbable circumstances and had survived the most difficult tests. Near midnight, when most of the guests had already left, Gregory and Rachel escaped to the edge of the property's small lake. Sitting on, a rustic bench under the starry sky. They allowed themselves a moment of quiet. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, noticing Rachel's contemplative expression. "How unpredictable life is," she replied, resting her head on his shoulder. 3 years ago, I was running in the rain, certain my life was over. And now I'm here, married, pregnant, running a cultural center, surrounded by people who truly care about me." "You built this, Rachel," Gregory said with sincere admiration. "I just offered opportunities. You had the courage to take them." "We built it together," she corrected him, "each of us healing the other's wounds as we moved forward." From his jacket pocket, Gregory took out a small package. "A wedding gift," he explained, handing it to her. Inside the box, Rachel found a delicate gold chain with 3 pendants, a crystal water drop, a small house in white gold, and a sun in yellow gold. "The water represents our beginning, that stormy night," he explained. "The house is the home we built together, not just physical, but emotional. And the sun." He gently touched her belly. "The sun is our future, shining brightly before us." Rachel allowed him to place the necklace around her neck, moved by the symbolism of the gift. "It's perfect," she murmured. Hand in hand, they contemplated the moon's reflection on the calm waters of the lake. The path to this point had been neither easy nor direct. Both carried scars, some visible, others deeply hidden. But they had learned that scars were not just marks of past pain, they were also evidence of healing, of resilience, of the capacity to continue. 6 months later, in a delivery room at the best maternity hospital in London, Rachel gave birth to a baby girl, with dark hair like her mother and intense eyes like her father. The little one arrived in the world on a spring morning, announcing her presence with a strong and healthy cry. "Sophia," Rachel whispered when they placed her in her arms for the first time. They had chosen the name together. Sophia, wisdom. The wisdom to accept the past without letting it define the future. The wisdom to recognize that the most beautiful endings often arise from the most difficult beginnings. Gregory, sitting on the edge of the hospital bed, watched mother and daughter with an expression of reverence. When Sophia grasped his finger with surprising strength for someone so small, he felt something definitely heal within him. It wasn't forgetting. He would never forget Marina and Peter, never stop missing them. But it was as if an adjacent space opened in his heart, allowing this new love to exist fully, without diminishing the previous one. "She's perfect," he said, his voice hoarse with emotion. "Like her mother." Rachel smiled, exhausted but radiant. "We are all imperfect, Gregory. That's what makes us human. That's what allows us to grow, change, reinvent ourselves." Sophia opened her eyes then, dark, alert eyes that seemed to observe the world with infinite curiosity, eyes that carried no weight from the past, only the limitless promise of the future. "Welcome to the world, Sophia Oliver Mason," Rachel whispered. "A complicated world, sometimes frightening, often unfair, but also full of possibilities, of second chances, of love born in the most unexpected places." Gregory enveloped both in a gentle hug, forming a perfect circle of protection and belonging. In that moment, in that hospital room in London, they were complete, not because they had found some idealized perfection or because all problems had magically disappeared. They were complete because they had faced their demons, together and individually, and chosen each day the courage to love again. Outside, London continued its frantic pace, a city of contrasts, of inequalities, but also of infinite possibilities for those brave enough to seek them. The same city that had witnessed Rachel's despair on that rainy night now celebrated, unknowingly, the birth not only of Sophia, but of a family built on the most solid foundations of all: choice, respect, and the profound understanding that true love is not a fairy tale but a daily work of reconstruction and growth. And in a hospital room in the heart of that relentless metropolis, 3 hearts beat in a new harmony, a melody of new beginnings, of second chances, of futures no one could have predicted, but which were infinitely more beautiful for having been hard won. 2 years later, the Marina Mason Cultural Center had become a landmark in the community. Under Rachel's passionate direction, the space welcomed hundreds of children and teenagers daily for art, music, theatre and literature classes. On the institution's second anniversary, a special exhibition occupied the main gallery, photographs, documenting the transformation of the neighbourhood and the lives of its residents since the cultural centre's arrival. Gregory watched with pride as Rachel, with Sophia comfortably perched on her hip, led municipal authorities and sponsors through the space. The 2-year-old girl, bright and lively, pointed at the colourful photos, babbling excitedly in her own language that mixed recognizable words with invented sounds. Later that night, in their home in Belgravia, now truly a home with toys strategically scattered and family photos everywhere, Gregory and Rachel privately celebrated the success of the event. "I'm thinking of expanding the concept to other areas of the city," Gregory commented as he poured wine for both of them. Sophia was already asleep, exhausted after a day of adventures. "A cultural centre in every disadvantaged area of London?" Rachel asked, smiling. "Ambitious, even for you." "Why not? The model works. It makes a real difference in people's lives." Rachel studied the man in front of her, still the powerful businessman she had known, but transformed in so many subtle and profound ways. More open, more connected to the needs of others, more aware of his privilege and the power he had to create positive change. "Do you know what impresses me most about you?" she asked, moving closer to touch his face. "Your ability to transform pain into purpose, to use what you have to create something meaningful." Gregory held her hand, gently kissing her palm. "I learned from you. When we met, you had every reason to become bitter, distrustful, closed off. Instead, you used your experience to become more empathetic, more determined to help others." Rachel's phone rang, interrupting the moment. It was Susan calling to inform her that Rachel's mother had arrived at the estate for her biannual visit. In the past 2 years, a carefully constructed relationship had formed between mother and daughter. Never as close as before, but marked by a mutual respect that slowly grew. "We'll be there for the weekend," Rachel confirmed. "Sophia is eager to show Grandma how she can already swim in the shallow part of the lake." After hanging up, she sat back down beside Gregory on the sofa. They remained in comfortable silence for a moment, appreciating the tranquility of the house, the wine, each other's presence. "Sometimes I still wonder," Rachel commented softly, "what would have happened if you hadn't stopped the car that night? If you hadn't seen me fallen by the riverbank? I would have missed the best part of my life," he replied simply. "Sophia would never have been born. The cultural centre wouldn't exist. And I would probably still be living like a ghost, existing without truly living." Rachel rested her head on his shoulder, reflecting on all the moments, good and bad, that had brought them to this point. The desperate escape, the improbable rescue, the months of caution and distrust, the slow building of trust, the confrontation with Marcus, the gradual blossoming of love, Sophia's birth, the construction of a life together that honored the past while celebrating the present and embracing the future. "Did you know Mason means one who builds?" Gregory asked, breaking the silence. "I read that somewhere recently." "We are all building something one way or another," Rachel replied. "Building with love, with courage, with the possibility of starting anew." Outside, the London night enveloped the house in its dark mantle, dotted with the lights of the city that never truly sleeps. Inside, the small Oliver Mason family rested, not in perfection, but in peace. A peace earned through difficulties, through difficult choices, through a daily commitment to truth and mutual growth. In the next room, Sophia dreams of a child growing up, knowing she is loved unconditionally, protected but not stifled, encouraged to explore the world with curiosity and courage. A child who would one day know the full story of her parents. Not a romanticized fairy tale, but the complex and inspiring truth of how two people broken by the world found each other on a stormy night and together rebuilt themselves into something stronger, fuller, truer than any previous version of themselves. And on the horizon of London, beyond the skyscrapers and the deprived areas, beyond the congested avenues and the tranquil parks, A new morning was dawning, bringing with it, as always, the renewed promise of new beginnings and transformation for all who had the courage to embrace it.